So in my opinion, the reason that Asherah got edited, redacted, removed from the Bible is because of the patriarchy. Now, some will say it was because of monotheism. You can only have one God in monotheism. But guess what? Monotheism did not exist at the time. I believe that monotheism really didn't come out until after the Second Temple had been destroyed. That is when I believe monotheism, the idea of just one single solitary God, began to develop. Because when you look at other cultures during those times, 500 BCE, first century, there were still pantheons with many gods. Sure, there may have been one that had the most control and power, but we see that throughout the ages anyway. At one point in time, El was the one with most power and control, and Baal was the one with the most power and control, and then it was Yahweh. So we see that repeated through time. So to me, that is not the answer. The answer is simply the patriarchy. This might be a long, rambling video. I apologize. I do not have anything written out, but I'm going to give you some books, articles that you can read for more information. You do not have to take my word, because I am just an amateur. I'm just someone who loves the goddess. I have a hair on me. I am not even a believer. I would consider myself atheist, but I do kind of go under the umbrella of atheo-pagan because I love the goddess. I love what she represents. And here's the thing. Her story is our story, right? Because gods are just representation of us, of our cultures, of our traditions. So when they erased her, that was part of the patriarchy, erasing us, our representation. That's why we got to bring her back, in my opinion. We need some balance to this all-male bullshit shenanigans that we're living in. People call it the Matrix, but I've heard that it's actually the Patrix or Patrix, however you say it. That to me makes more sense. Anyhow, let's get into it. First book I recommend, Did God Have a Wife by William Deaver. If reading is not your thing, he also has some presentations, whatever you want to call it, on YouTube. Really good. The Hebrew Goddess by Raphael Patai. Yahweh and the Gods and Goddesses of Canaan. The Cult of Asherah in Ancient Israel and Judah by Judith Hadley. You can find all of these on archive.org. I have many, but those are a great start. You'll love this paper, Yahweh's Divorce, the Hidden Goddess in the Garden of Eden by Arthur George. Also, you can watch him online present this if, again, reading is not your thing. You can find this on Academia.edu for free. And there are a ton of papers on here about Asherah that you can read that are researched with references, so you can look it up for yourself. Also, jstor.org, JSTOR.org, also has free resources, papers, journal articles, etc. I have a ton of stuff saved in there about Asherah. All right, let's get to it. First, let's talk about Yahweh and El because they are pertinent to Asherah. El is the head of the Canaanite pantheon. He is seen as the father god. His divine consort is Asherah. They have 70 plus sons. They are written about in the Bible. Yahweh is one of those sons. Somewhere around 1200, 1100 BCE, there is a Bronze Age collapse. And this vacuum leaves a perfect opportunity for Yahweh to rise up and then soon usurp El. Now, with taking over El's position, of course, what would he take with him? Well, every damn thing plus that consort. And we have archaeological evidence, and even sifting through lines in the Bible, we can see that Asherah and Yahweh were worshipped side by side in the temple. And not only just like the main temple, but we're talking about other temples scattered throughout Israel and Judah. Most of the information that we have about the Canaanite pantheon comes from the Ugaritic texts, the clay tablets that were found. But there have been others like the Ebla tablets, Amarna, etc. that also mention some of the goings-on day-to-day and the gods in the vicinity of Canaan. But The first time that we have mention of Yahweh is around 850 BCE with the Mesha stele, where he lost to Chemosh. The first time that we have the Israelites written down is the Merneptah stele sometime around 1200-ish BCE. So we have the first occurrence of the Israelites somewhere around 1200 BCE. Then we finally have Yahweh making his appearance in the archaeological record in around 900, 850 BCE. I think that's important to know because it shows you how long it took for him to make his way into that period of darkness from the Bronze Age collapse to where the Israelites are really starting to get themselves together. They get a king, they're getting a kingdom, like they're starting to feel themselves in Canaan. In the Israelites' mind, Yahweh defeated El, and in doing so, he would take on El's attributes, his divine names, and his consort. If there were writings, any liturgy, poetry, whatever about El, that would now be given to Yahweh. And that happened time and time again. As I have shown in the Ugaritic texts, Baal's called rider on the clouds. And then when we look in, I believe, Psalms and probably throughout different verses in the Bible, Yahweh is now called rider on the clouds. With the power that the elites had that wrote the Bible, if they wanted something to be true, all they had to do was write it. There is no condemnation of the worship of Asherah until after the exile. Now, the redactionist history will have you believe that that is not the case. They'll say, we never worship Asherah. We've always said it was wrong. We never did that. That small elite voice did not represent the Israelites as a whole. Could you imagine someone from the government coming to your church, to your temple, and knocking it down and saying, we don't do that here? Well, that is exactly what is happening. And if something inside you goes, oh, that's wrong, because it is wrong. Because people have a right to worship how they want to worship their God. We don't have to be dogmatic about it. When there's dogma, it's attached to power and control and patriarchy. Let's quickly cover the topic of schmacrifice, because it always comes up in my comment section. We don't worship Asherah because they schmacrifice schmildren. Coming from Christians whose whole religion is based off the death of a child of a god. Child schmackerschmice. That's rich. Let's be honest. Schmacrifice was happening in many different cultures. It was not just this one in particular. We don't need to continuously single it out. We get it. But on that same coin, on the flip side, I got biblical verses that prove the same thing was happening with the Yahwehs. So I don't want to hear that as an excuse. People did bad things they shouldn't have done. Christians have done bad things that they shouldn't have done, but they consistently say, that wasn't us, right? When it comes to residential schools and how many indigenous people they made assimilate to their religion. That wasn't us. Okay, same shit, different part of history. See what I'm saying? I feel like I've ran that through. I'm not really sure what else I can add to it. So now I want to get to our symbols because we've only got like a minute left. Trees, snakes, gardens, groves, lions are all symbols of the goddess. Symbolism and iconography. She is stood atop a lion on this pendant because she has prowess. She is regal. She is royal. She has power. She is also called Lion Lady. Her pubic triangle. From her pubic triangle, because she's a fertility goddess, from her pubic triangle, you can see snakes. Snakes represent fecundity, healing, regeneration. They are also conduits of the divine. She is holding two maybe ibexes, probably something to do with fertility. She is wearing Hathor's wig because we know that Canaanite were a vassal to Egypt, so there's going to be some crossover with that. This pendant has a pubic triangle and coming from it, a tree of life. Above that are breasts, and again, she is wearing the Hathor-styled wig. And when we picture the Garden of Eden having the knowledge that Asherah was worshipped amongst the trees, or planting trees was a way to worship her, we can see that her symbols are hidden inside of this story. All the symbols that empowered us were now demonized.